Well, Mr. Munn, should we get started?
Let's do it.
Okay. So welcome to your budget orientation meeting. It feels like we were just in this room last year. I can't believe a whole year has flown by. Woo! So one thing we can always count on is the budget happens every year. So first, want to just open with appreciation and gratitude to our Board of Commissioners as well as our community members who sign up to be part of this process. The budget is the vehicle to put dollars into action in service delivery to our community. And so this is an incredible process for you to be part of, to learn your budget dollars, your tax dollars at work in service delivery. And also through this process, you'll continue to learn. Thank you for our returning committee members and also our new committee members. Learn of our budget transformation work that we've been on, what steps we've taken this year as we've continued to evolve as Washington County. So let's just start with intros, and how we will do intros is introduce your name and what budget committee you serve on for staff, your role at the county, that would be helpful, and why is this process important to you? What does it mean to you as an individual elected official, community member? So my name is Tanya Angie, and I am honored and humbled to serve as the county administrator for Washington County. The budget, I kind of shared what it means to me, but I get excited about budget. The staff team knows this time of year I have lots of sleepless nights because I dream of budget. If you ask my family, they will tell you I actually talk about budget in my sleep because I sleep talk. But the reason why is because it truly is the vehicle for service delivery. It is the allocation of service dollars at work, and that's an incredibly important process. And my role as county administrator is being that steward of democracy, and being that steward of democracy, the budget is an important part of that process. And with that, I'd like to introduce Greg Munn and let him introduce himself a bit more.
Thank you. And my name is Greg Munn. I know most of you, I think I know all of you in here now. Had the opportunity over the last couple of years. I'm the CFO for the county, and that's it. So I'm going to just pass
Greg,
this around.
why is the budget important to you?
Why is the budget important to me? Well, what Ms. Angie didn't mention is she doesn't only dream about the budget, but she dreams about it in color. There's therapy for that later. So for me, and she mentioned it too, it's probably the most important policy document that the Board of Commissioners puts together, and it's the connection between the resources that are provided, the community provides to this governing body to provide services back to them. That's a real simplistic way to look at it, but if you think about it in that way, that's just how important it is. It gets complicated. It's fund accounting, and we'll go through some of this, is complex, but just generally thinking about it, it's that relationship between the public giving us funds, trusting us with money to provide services back to the public. So that's what it means to me. All right.
I'm Dick Steinbrugge. I'm on the Enhanced Sheriff Patrol District and Urban Road Maintenance District Budget Committee. That's a mouthful. Second year, so I've learned how to say all that. What else am I supposed to say? So the budget's important to me because I've spent most of my career in the public service. I'm retired now, so I have time to do other things than what my regular job was. But I understand the connection between making budget decisions and the services that go into the community. I've lived in Washington County since 1998, and it's time for me to give back some time and hopefully apply some of my lessons learned over my career in this endeavor. Did I leave anything out?
Hi, my name is Melissa Laird, and I'm on the Washington County budget. I was on the ESPD URMD budget, but I graduated, or what was it? I was promoted, but no, graduated. So the reason the budget's important to me is there's never enough money to go around, and where the challenges are seen when you're doing the budget. It also shows where the priorities are, and those decisions are hard to make. They're tough ones, and I enjoy being a part of that decision-making process.
Good evening. My name is Pam Treese, and I'm Commissioner for Washington County District 2. The budget's important to me because it's the backbone of everything that we do. It's also the nexus between what our community needs and what our staff work is. It really brings everything into sharp focus for me. So I enjoy this time, and I always learn a lot more about our county, about our communities as a whole, and also about our staff and the work that we are required to do and how we do it.
Good evening, everyone, and thanks for contributing your time and energy to serve on our various budget committee meetings, or on our budget committees. My name is Catherine Harrington. I'm the elected chair of your 5-member Washington County Board of Commissioners, and a budget to me is policy in action. It makes no good to have a policy if you don't have dollars in order for those policies to be put into action in community. So that's it. Oh, and I thank my lucky stars that I don't dream about budget or talk about budget in my sleep. And I thought I was a budget nerd.
Good evening, Jerry Willie, Washington County Commissioner for District 4. And I think this is a process where we invite public comment and give us some priorities for where we spend our very limited amount of money, and so we have to be prioritized about that. So thank you very much for being here, and certainly over the next month we're going to spend some time talking about numbers. And yes, Tanya, I dream in debits and credits, unfortunately.
Hello, I'm Bruce Young. I'm on the North Bethany Budget Committee for Roads, and this is my second year of my second term, correct? Anyway, I got involved in this before, shortly after we moved here in 2017, moved my whole family out here, all 4 generations now, because my granddaughter just had a baby. And roads are important, one of the single most important things we do. And over in our developing area, there's a lot of priorities, and it's important that those of us who are from the neighborhood are on the committee making sure that those priorities match what the priorities in the neighborhood are. Now, you might always not involve agreement from all of my neighbors, but the fact of the matter is we've tried to maintain safety first. In a lot of different instances, we voted for money a couple of years ago for a safety project that probably delayed another project that we had in the works, but was important because it kept people off the street and getting hit by cars. So that's the kind of focus I've got on it, and I'm enjoying it, and I hopefully continue to do it as long as I can. Thank you.
So we had a couple new members join, so we're just going around and giving introductions. So your name, what budget committee you serve on, and what does the budget mean to you?
Hi, I'm Bruce Dickinson. I was a volunteer first year last year as a committee member. Recently retired a couple years ago and decided I'd love to do something in the county to be of help. I'm on the Sheriff's Patrol Bethany Committee. It's like the Buy a Vowel Committee. And when I think budget, I think efficiency. It gives us an opportunity to be efficient with dollars we have to deliver services.
Good evening, I'm Karen Bolin. This is my 8th year participating in the budget process. I think of myself as a steward of the message out in the community. When I talk to people, I'll say, do you know what it costs to run the Washington County for, just 1 year? So being stewards of the message outside of this and letting people know that we are careful with the money that they entrust to us. And so I think that's an important role that I play outside this room. So I'm excited to see what round 8 looks like.
Good evening, I'm Joe Everton. I'm on the Washington County and SDL1 Coming back for my second year. Didn't scare me off yet. So no, I'm excited about this because budgeting shows where our priorities are as a community, and there are interesting discussions to be had and problems to solve, and I'm excited to be a part of that. Thanks.
Hi, I'll hand it over there next. I'm Brad Anderson. I am the County Counsel for Washington County, and the budget means to me, part of my role is just to make sure that we're complying with state law when we adopt a budget, and that's important because you know, we got to make sure we're transparent and that we're complying with all the state requirements, and this team does a really good job at it.
Hi, everybody. I'm Jeff Sarafa, and I'm on the Service Lighting District number 1, if I got that right. And I'm a controller at a Beaverton software company in the fintech space. And so I bring a lot of experience in forecasting and budgeting in the corporate world, both public and private companies, large and small, for over 25 years. So I think I can add a lot of value with my skills towards the budgeting process. And the reason it's important to me is that I recently served as a member of the Citizen Oversight Committee for the Hillsborough School District bond that just completed a 5-year term on that. And we did a lot of great work allocating dollars, helping provide influence and discussion about prioritization for the bond dollars. And it was a really rewarding experience for me. I live in Hillsborough. I've got 3 kids in the public schools. My wife's an educator in the district. So I felt like it was a good way for me to give back to my community. And after that term ended this fall, I wanted to find another way to do that. And this presented itself to me. So it was a great way for me to continue doing some public service, use my skills, and do good for my community.
Thank you. Good evening. Nafisa Fai. Hi, great to see you. Welcome. Nafisa Fai, Washington County Commissioner for District 1, and this is my 4th year on the Budget Committee because I'm on my 4th year of my first term. And what does the budget mean to me? You know, this means to me, this is how we show where we're investing and how we are investing in our communities. And this is the process that we show that. And as we all know, process is policy. So I'm really excited to see where we're investing again and how, Tanya, your budget, balanced budget, I look forward to receiving it. I will say that this is the 1 year that I wish I lived in Tanya's brain. Any other time, no, because she's balancing enormous information as the county administrator for the 2nd largest county in Oregon. But this is the one time I wish I could just drain your brain about the budget piece to really just see how, because what we see, I imagine, is only 5% of what's happening behind the scenes. Because this is, after all, as we reflect back on last year, $1.7 billion budget. It's not just the 6 meetings that we have among ourselves. There's a lot more time and effort that goes into balancing that, you know, significant amount of money. And then the services, to pick and choose which services we invest in and how much we invest in that. So I'm really looking forward to it, and I'm excited to continue to see familiar faces and welcome new faces.
Hi, my name is Pradnya Patil. This is my first year volunteering on the budget committee, and I am on the URMD ESPD budget committee. Nailed it. I work in tech, so good with the abbreviations. I have been living in Washington County for about 15 years now, and like I said, I work in tech, managing budgets, working on forecasting year over year, quarter over quarter. I'm very familiar with that. I'm sure this process is slightly different than what it is, but I think the gist of it is going to be the same. Where do you allocate the money? How do you do that to get the best and the most value possible for the community. For me, it's my way of just giving, paying it forward, giving it back to my community, because I have 2 kids who grew up in this community, and there is so much that this community has given me. And I wanted to give back in a more meaningful, more objective way, and what better way than, quantifiable numbers. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Good to see you all. I'm Sig Unander, Commissioner of Willie's District, number 4. I'm a former city councilor in Cornelius. Also worked for quite a while for Habitat for Humanity. Although this is will be my first experience on the Budget Committee. Not my first serving Washington County. I've served on the Housing Advisory Committee, Community Corrections, and I think 4 others over the past 20 years. So I'm excited to continue that public service. And what does the budget mean? Washington County is the engine that drives Oregon's economy. It's increasingly diverse. We need to honor that diversity, make sure everyone is accorded their proper allocation of resources. And I'm excited to see the county continue to grow, diversify. It's just a really exciting time to be here in Washington County. So thank you very much. I stand corrected, Madam Chair.
Hi, everyone. My name is Danny Ledesma. I'm one of the assistant county administrators, and this is my first budget process with Washington County, although I've gone through quite a few public budget processes. What I love about the budget process is that it is this great intersection between resource, policy, and our values as a community. And I love, I'm so excited that it's an opportunity to see our elected leaders, staff, and amazing community volunteers who, want to sort of grapple with tough questions. It's the thing that makes my heart sing, so I'm really excited.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jory Mesner. I am staff assistant to the board for Chair Harrington. I think that the local county budget has a different relationship than a lot of other government organizations, and I find that to be really interesting, and I'm really excited to be a part of that for the first time. If you all have any questions or need anything from Chair Harrington, feel free to reach out to me. I'd be happy to help.
Hi, I'm Megan McKibben, assistant to the county administrator, and I think this is I was just trying to count which time this is for me with the budget. And 4, it's 4. Thanks, Brenda. So, and it's always interesting every time. So, that is true. I forget that. Back for more.
Hi, everyone. My name is Maida Pula. I'm a staff assistant to the board, and I assist Commissioner Treese and Commissioner Willie, so if you need anything from them, please feel free to reach out to me. I come from the Oregon State Legislature, so this is a very different budget cycle for me, and I'm very, very happy that it's so transparent and so hands-on, and I'm really looking forward to understanding that this year.
Hi, everyone. My name is Brenda Bartlett. I am also staff assistant to the board. I assist Commissioner Fye, so if you need anything, come find me. And Joe took all of the reasons why I like the budget. So, ditto Joe.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Erin Calvert, another one of the ACAs assigned to Public Safety and Emergency Management. And so many good things have been said, so I'll just try to say something a little bit different. One thing I love about my role is sort of being in this position is working with the board and the budget committee, all of you, and then sort of translating that to the operation, the policy decisions that are made, and really seeing how that plays out in the operations of our county departments. So I think that's pretty exciting.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Marnie Kyle, another of the Assistant County Administrators, and I have Health and Human Services, Housing, Community Development, and just for fun, Assessment and Taxation, which is where elections sits in my portfolio. And I was thinking very similar to Aaron. A lot of you have said the importance of the budget being a policy really to serve our community and meet the community needs as best we can within our resources, prioritizing those community needs, and then translating that into actual programs and operationalizing the needs for our community.
And I'm Erin Doyle, the Senior Government Relations Manager for Washington County. I have been with the county since 2019. I pay attention to the budget because it directs so much of my work to figure out when we don't have the resources, how to go and get them, and then how to tell the story of the how we effectively use the resources to meet the needs of the community. So excited to be here with you all.
Thank you. And I would actually like, did we miss anyone in the audience? I don't think so. I'd like Clerk Moss to actually introduce himself, because you'll be seeing a lot of Clerk Moss, or AKA Kevin, at your upcoming meetings.
Thank you, Administrator Angie. So Kevin Moss, I'm the clerk of the board, so I put together all the board materials, so I'll be working closely with Angie and Greg Munn here to make sure all your materials are put together, not only for you, but for all the members of the public. So what we try to do, the budget to me, it's all about the transparency. And so you'll see with all the meetings we have with the board, we make Washington County one of the most transparent counties in the entire state. So that's what I'm proud of what we do.
Well, with that, thank you for taking the time for introductions. You all are going to spend quite a bit of time together, so getting to know each other a bit about our stories is helpful before we dive into the work. So Greg, I'll turn it over to you to take over the rest of the agenda.
Thank you very much, everybody. One thing I want to I thought about is I was watching the microphone being passed around, is one of the other sort of non-agenda hidden purposes here that's might be as valuable or more valuable than what you're going to hear is just this opportunity for staff to see budget committee members to see staff, and to start to develop those relationships as we move forward. A lot of the staff that introduce themselves here will be actually presenting the budget information on the schedule as we move forward, and I'll point that out later. But I just wanted to put that out there for you. So, this is the overview, but my goal here, a couple things, is this is probably, I'm hoping for more of an educational communication dialogue back and forth, less of a presentation of me talking. So I would just suggest that if you have questions, just raise your hand as we go. I'll probably pause at the end of each slide and give you a chance to ask some questions. But my hope here is that there's a bunch of bullet points here that we'll go through, and is really to build an educational foundation of what it means to build a budget at local government in Oregon. And that sounds pretty big, but there's some components to it, and we'll just be breaking it down into smaller pieces. And I hope if I do my job, then tonight you'll come out knowing something that you didn't know when you got here today. Okay, so we'll start with Oregon budget law. And if you really want some dry reading, you can go to that reference there, ORS 294-321. Except if you're Brad. Brad probably likes that. And probably can interpret it super quickly. But what this slide here does is it really breaks down the key components of what Oregon budget law is all about. One of the big pieces is establishing standard procedures. If you can imagine what it would be like if there were no standard procedures across all sorts of governments in Oregon, what it would be like. So it starts to help us have some boxes to enter information in and keep things within a more of a structured process, so that the results are more structured and similar across different governments. Outline programs and fiscal policies. What are the services that we provide, and what are our fiscal policies around those services? The purpose also is to require an estimate of resources and expenditures, and it's very detailed on how that ends up being done, and encourage citizen participation. This is one of the components here tonight, is the Budget Committee. There's also an opportunity for public comment. We have public hearings. As much as we can, you've heard the word transparency a couple of times tonight already. That's a big deal, and to the extent that I can demystify the budget and make it as transparent, as clear as possible, then that's one of my goals. And then, of course, in the end, is to control, make sure that our expenditures are staying within the amount that the board ends up adopting in terms of appropriations. But the very bottom there isn't in ORS 294 321. So for me, it sort of summarizes down to telling the financial story in a standardized format, and one that we can not only tell in a standardized format with other local governments, but from year to year to year within the county, is so that we build this longitudinal story about the county's budget and allocation of resources. That, to me, I think sort of summarizes the purpose of Oregon budget law. I forgot to pause. Any questions? Okay. So I thought what I would do is just throw in some selected components of the Oregon budget law, and we'll just throw these out because these will probably be referred to as I'm talking, but budget officer, the Oregon budget law requires that each local government appoint a budget officer. For Washington County, that's Tanya Angie. She's our official budget officer. It also requires we establish a basis of accounting, and there's different basis of accounting. One is cash, one is full accrual, and for most local governments, it's a modified accrual basis, so that's our basis of accounting. It also provides for different kinds of funds. For example, internal service funds. Those are funds within the county that sell services to other funds within the county. Reserve funds, those are dollars that the county might set aside or save for a capital purpose or some other program that's coming up in the next few years. It provides a manner for estimating our expenditures. It helps, or it defines how we determine our estimated tax revenue. So this is the same across all local governments. It provides for unappropriated ending fund balance. Those are just dollars that the board does not appropriate for spending in the current fiscal year, but rather leaves them for future fiscal years. It lays out what a budget message means, and the budget message will be delivered by the budget officer at our first budget committee meeting, which is 2 weeks from tonight. It defines the budget committee, all of you here. Format for notices, publication of notices, manner of publication, all of those are defined in how the county, the local government, communicates with the public. Filing requirements afterwards, how do we transfer appropriations within funds, interfund loans, and then after we move into the beginning or to the next fiscal year, what's the process for actually requesting a budget increase? Those are called supplemental budgets. So what is a budget? A budget is essentially, it's two things really. It's a financial plan for 1 year, in our case. Some local governments will run a biennial budget, so that would end up being a 2-year budget, but we run a single-year budget. And the other part is that it's really the last sentence there. It's a complete budget justifies the imposition of property taxes and the making of appropriations. The reason why that's important is without taxes and appropriations, the county doesn't have the legal authority to spend money. The budget process is a 1-year plan that establishes appropriations beginning July 1 so that we can actually legally spend money. Why create a budget? Just for this reason I just said, is so that we can actually have appropriations, so that we can have the ability to spend money on those services that are important to the community. Who creates the budget? It's I sort of look at it in 3 phases. One is it's prepared and proposed by staff. So that's where we're at the very tail end right now. We're at the tail end of putting together the proposed budget. This process started back in October, building the budget for this year. And it's at the end of this, which is in 2 weeks from tonight, it's proposed by the budget officer. Then the budget committee meetings go into effect, and that's where step number 2 comes in. That's where the budget is modified potentially and eventually approved by the budget committee. Once the budget committee approves the budget, they're effectively sending it to the Board of Commissioners for the board then to modify potentially and then adopt the budget. The board will meet to discuss that on June 18th, and then that puts the legal authority for our budget beginning July 1 for the next fiscal year. How to create a budget. This is Oregon budget law. There's a couple of legal references there. One is the revised ORS, revised statutes, and the other one is the OARs. Those are the administrative rules for the state of Oregon. And there's some references refer to 8 steps for the budget. These are 9. So you get a little bit extra tonight than you would normally get. One is to appoint the budget officer, which is Miss Angie. Appoint electors to the budget committee. That's you folks, and if you're new here, you know that this started back in January. You probably got a phone call from me. We set up a meeting. We had an interview. And then the board, I think, approved I think it was April 1st. So the recommended budget committee members, the appointees, go to the board. This was in mid-March. The board hears the budget committee recommendations, and then 2 weeks later, which I believe was April 1st, the board actually approved the budget committee. So we're all really glad you're here. The next step is to publish notice of the budget committee meeting. That's going on right now, and there's those legal requirements that are set up so that we do the same thing that you'll see us do as maybe a cemetery district. Even though they're much smaller, they still have the same rules to follow. So we'll publish those committee meetings, which will announce the April 29th and the May 15th through 17th meetings. The April 29th meeting will be the first official meeting of the budget committees. All budget committees meetings will be, this is different than last year, so if your last year was a little bit different. All the committees will meet together and hear the budget message together, and then there'll also be a financial update together, and then we will walk through the budget book, which this is what the budget book looks like. So we'll actually walk through and explain the different components of the budget book. And then you'll have a couple of weeks. We'll send you off with a couple of weeks to study the budget book. Come back on May 15th, and that's budget committee meeting number 2, May 15th through the 17th. And that's where we'll hear the presentations from a lot of the folks that you just heard tonight. And that'll give an opportunity for deliberations for the budget committees, an opportunity for public input, and then eventually approval of the budget. Then we will publish a summary of the notice of the budget hearing. That's just required before the budget goes to the board for adoption. The budget hearing on June 18th with the board, and then that's when the board would adopt the budget and approve taxes. Okay, so the county, I thought a visual would help here. And actually, this was part of my research because I wasn't exactly sure in the beginning where the different budget committees work was located on the map. So there's 2 maps here. We have 3 budget committees. The first budget committee is obviously, it's the county. It's the big budget committee that is most of the county's budget. And of course, that follows the geographical lines of the county in that upper right-hand graph. Service district for lighting number 1 is represented in the lower picture, and the areas that are in yellow are the areas that are served by SDL number 1. The Enhanced Sheriff Patrol, ESPD, and URMD, this isn't a great picture, but it's the area below that red circle. There's pockets in there of, yeah, the light yellow and the pink. I apologize. That's not a very good picture. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, the green, the pink, and the light yellow, generally those are the areas that cover URMD and ESPD. The two of those don't match up exactly the same, but they're very, very close. So that budget committee covers both of those. And then the little red circle at the top, that's North Bethany. So that component up there is the North Bethany. Spalding Whitey, yeah. But I wanted to give you a picture here so you could actually visually see where these budget committees covered. Okay, the Budget Committee overview. What is the Budget Committee? It's the county's Fiscal Planning Advisory Committee. It's composed of the Board of Commissioners and an equal number of electors, so 5 Board of Commissioners, 5 electors per Budget Committee. So if we add everybody up together, that's 20 people that are involved on the Budget Committees. The appointments are 3 years and they're staggered. There's equal authority for each Budget Committee member. Everybody has a vote. And the last bullet here is part of tonight is for us to help the members of the Budget Committee develop an understanding of the budget process, the tax legal constraints with our tax system, local budgeting in Oregon, county functions, and so forth. And here is the reference again. This is right out of the ORS. 294-414 is the Budget Committee. It says the governing body of each municipal corporation shall establish a budget committee in accordance with the provisions of this section. So that's the legal authority to create the budget committee. And the duties are to receive the budget message. Again, that will be delivered by Ms. Angie. And the proposed budget document, we'll be walking through that with you in 2 weeks from tonight. Then you'll have a period of time to review the proposed budget. There'll be an opportunity to consider public comment and, bless you, and another opportunity to deliberate as we move forward and change the budget as necessary, ultimately approving each of the budgets that you're responsible for and any tax levies. Okay, this is more of a specific schedule. So tonight we're here on April 15th. 2 weeks from tonight will be Budget Committee meeting number 1. That's 6 to 8 o'clock. It'll be in this room. The layout will be different than this, but it'll be here. Each of the committees will elect a chair and a vice chair, hear the budget message, and then receive the proposed budget document. April 30th, the next day through May 14th, there'll be a budget review and study period. May 15th through 17th is Budget Committee meeting number 2. Those are Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And these will be the county budget presentations, deliberations amongst the budget committees. There'll be opportunities for public comment and hearings, and eventually leading to budget and tax levy approval by the Budget Committee. That gets sent, if necessary, if needed, on the 22nd and the 29th. We have some spots reserved for additional meetings if we need those. Those are placeholders for now, and we will activate those if needed as we get further into the process.
Greg, can you speak a little bit more to April 29th and especially for returning Budget Committee members, how your first meeting will be different this year compared to last year?
So last year we had evening meetings, and we broke those evening meetings up by Budget Committee. So Washington County and Service District for Lighting number 1 started one night. ESPD, URMD was another night. At each of those Budget Committee meetings, we went through the budget message, and all of what we're doing on the 29th, we did those individually. So the difference is that we're all coming together to hear the same thing at the same time, essentially.
Also at that meeting, Greg will will walk through the proposed budget, how to read the budget. And this is helpful not only, we think, for Budget Committee members, but members of the public. I should note April, I almost said August. Here I'm trying to fast forward to the end of summer. April 29th is the day that the budget is publicly available for the first time. So you will be hearing the budget message on that first day that the budget is publicly available. Mr. Munn will also speak to, and I had mentioned this within my opening comments, speak to the budget and financial transformation that we've been undergoing here underneath the Board of Commissioners guidance at Washington County. And so that will include just a fiscal overview and economic outlook during that message. You will not be hearing the presentation of the details of the budget. You have 2 weeks then after that budget message to dive deep into your own reading of the budget. Reach out to staff if you have any questions going into the budget committees. What we try to do, and I think we've really, I think we've mastered it, I'm proud of the team, is we want to collect all of those questions we're getting from you as committee members, and we create a repository so you can learn from each other, because if one person has a question, maybe another person has a similar question, or you can just learn from what those answers are. And we also make those questions and answers publicly available too, so the community can see that as well. The format of the...
Yes, yeah. And so I was just going to tag on to what Ms. Angie said, and what I think what you're referring to is, so part of this budget transformation is we have some changes we want to make over the next few years, and then we also take feedback from budget committee and board members and incorporate those as we move forward. The one that's being referred to here is changing the numeric tables that are in the budget document, so that you have some, it follows more of a financial statement up and down layout, but also it gives you some history. So you'll know if the proposed budget, you'll see that, but you'll also see 2 prior years' actuals data. So you have something to compare to as you move forward. So that's a big, and this is just one small area that we're moving towards. You've heard me talk about GFOA. It's a Government Finance Officers Association. They lay out some really great standards in terms of budget presentation, and we're moving in that direction. This is one of the changes. Yeah, thanks for bringing that.
Yeah, yes, on...
And we will actually walk you through the budget document, which we didn't have time to do last time. We'll walk through it so that everybody understands.
Yeah, and I do want to just underscore the GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association. That is, in essence, the North Star of finance within local government. And we have a goal to achieve a Budget Excellence Award from GFOA. We won't be able to do this in 1 year, so each year we continue to build and using the GFOA framework as kind of that North Star for improvements. At the same time, getting feedback from you on how to make this document the best it can be for our community.
Okay, so the question was, between April 29th and May 15th, do the budget committee members meet offline?
No.
Did I hear that? Yeah, no. Yeah. So the budget, so it's a public process, so when the budget committee meets, it meets as a public body. And we'll have, as Ms. Angie said, we'll have some information for you on the 29th. When you have questions, you can send those in, and we'll keep all those questions and provide Q&A so that everybody gets to see them. Yeah. The plan is for budget committees to meet in here in person. Mm-hmm. We've tried it in the past. It seems to work if everybody is remote, or it works if everybody's in person. The hybrid is really a challenge. Yeah. There will be a recording on the 29th.
So just as with our Board of Commissioners meetings and work sessions, this meeting is being recorded too and publicly available after the meeting. That will be the same for all of our committee meetings as well. We do strongly ask, and I just want to underscore the in-person attendance from our budget committee meeting. It's just one of our spaces we've been learning as we go in that space for budget committee members to be talking to each other, asking questions. We've received feedback that was just really helpful. We do know that sometimes, I'll just say life happens, and there are those extenuating circumstances that someone would need to miss or actually participate via Zoom due to illness or something, and that's available.
Okay, one more thing I want to point out is May 15th through 17th. That's 3 full days. That doesn't mean all 3 budget committees are there for 3 full days. We're working on more of a micro schedule for each day, which will look something like the first day and a half will be Washington County and SDL number 1. Then we'll have time slots because we don't need as much time for ESPD, URMD, and we'll have one for North Bethany as well. Those will come out later. So just so that you all know, unless you want to, if you're on one of the other committees, you don't have to be there for the entire 3 days. That information is coming out soon. Okay, again, here's just a high-level overview of the budget. And I would say phase 0, which would be to your left, which isn't shown here, that's the development. That's where the budget is formulated. I think we have somewhere between 70 and 80 staff that work on developing the budgets across the county. And that might actually be light. But all of that happens ahead of when the actual budget is proposed in 2 weeks. We're right at the very end of that. We're putting everything together in the documents right now and getting ready for that phase 1, propose the budget. Phase 2 is approve the budget. That's really the budget committee's work to hear the presentations, deliberate, consider, and approve the budget. And then the board, phase 3, adopts the budget. And then we move into the next fiscal year, and the budget is only as good as when it's adopted. And just like anything else, it can go out of date. And so there's a mechanism for the board to approve budget increases into the next fiscal year. Those are called the supplementals. Okay, this is a real complicated slide. Here are the steps to develop a budget. You estimate your dollars coming in, you estimate your dollars going out, and you balance it. I actually was hoping I had something else other to say other than that, but I don't. This is right out of ORS, though. So one of the components of our budget is a contingency. So at the time we're developing the budgets now, we do our best to estimate those those resources. We do our best to estimate our expenditures, but we also have a policy that says for depending on what kind of fund, we have reserves set up. And they're not, I shouldn't say reserve, they're contingency, they're reserves for the next year. And those are appropriated by the board, but not to a specific spending line item. It's just appropriated where if something changes, then we can ask the board to move those appropriations from contingency to a spending line item. Yeah. Yep. I think so, yeah. If not, Okay, so the first, this may sound kind of simple, but this is a top line more procedural, not just revenue funnel, but the Oregon budget law says that we have to maintain our accounting records by fund. And all a fund is a way to collect all of the fiscal activity in one fund, including both the balance sheet side, the savings, the accounts payable, receivables, equity, and the annual operating, the annual revenue that comes in, the expenditures, and so forth, in a single fund. And that's what makes a local government, particularly one the size of Washington County, interesting and complex at the same time, because we do so many different things. I always tell people that we're an inch deep and a mile wide. And a lot of what we do is not related to other activities, but they're all organized underneath the county government. And that's an actual license plate from a former colleague of mine. They were into it. Not mine. Okay, so types of funds. This will be important as we move into the actual details of the budget, but when we've heard us talk about budget reductions and working on balancing our budget, most of our energy has been really spent in the general fund. And the general fund, the key thing there is it's the revenue that funds general county operations. And it's funded by mostly property tax, but other sources of revenue that are largely discretionary. They're not set aside for a specific activity, but more for a general activity. The next one, moving to your right, special revenue funds. Those make up the bulk of our budget. So again, we have roughly a $1.7 billion budget. About 25% of that is the general fund, but most of it is in special revenue funds. We actually call them special funds here, but it's the same as a special revenue fund. And those are specific resources that come to the county for specific purposes. We can't use them across other purposes. So someone might say, well, you have a $1.7 million budget. Why can't you use some of that to fill your shortfalls elsewhere? Because those revenues are dedicated to specific purposes. Internal Service Fund, I mentioned that earlier. That's, if you were here last year, that was a big part of our budget conversation where we moved our internal services into their own funds. So finance went from being in the general fund to an internal service fund, and ends up being funded by dollars allocated from all over the county. Enterprise funds internal service funds are enterprise funds, but an internal service fund or an enterprise fund, I should say, would be a fund that generates revenue through charges and services. The best example we have is our fairground operations. They sell tickets for the fair. There's activity with the Wingspan, fairgrounds rentals, and it's more like you would think a normal private sector business activity. Capital project funds, the county sells bonds, we get X millions of dollars to build a capital project. Those dollars go into a capital project fund. That's where those dollars are spent out of for that improvement. Debt service fund, if we borrowed for the capital, then we would pay the debt out of the debt service fund. And so the debt service fund has to have its own source of revenue to make those debt service payments. Trust and agency funds, those are typically funds that aren't budgeted, but if you think about a good example of that is our property tax. It's the fund that received property tax payments from everyone that lives in the county, all of the taxpayers in the county, and then is distributed, because our tax department distributes those dollars out to cities, other special districts. The county only keeps about 17 cents for every dollar that's collected in property tax revenue. So that is a fund that operates like a bank. The dollars come in and then they go distributed back out to our other local government partners. And reserve funds, those are dollars that we would reserve for specific purposes that the board would designate into the future. One could be for a replacement fund for expensive roof that's going to be needing to be replaced in the next 2 years or something like that. So Bruce, this is where the question I think that you were asking. Yeah. So a reserve fund could be funded simply by allocating a piece of property tax revenue. So property tax revenue that comes in is discretionary, and it gets put into the reserve fund. And maybe it's X amount every year for 5 years until the funds have built up for a specific purpose. So it's a subset. Yes. Yep, exactly. Yep. So resources. This is the process for estimating initially the revenue available, the resources available in any fund. The top line there, beginning cash or net working capital, you could think about that is how much money is in the bank account at July 1. So these would have been revenues or surplus revenue or excess revenue that was left over from prior budget periods. So it's the amount that's in the savings account available to be spent in the year. And then there's just a whole list of other potential budget resources. But what I want to do is I want to scroll all the way down and focus in on property taxes, because that one is a key component to our budget development. And with that, I've got a video to share. It's 4 minutes long, so it's not super long, but it does a lot better job than I can do explaining it. So. The suspense is building.
This is Joe Meek, one of the most famous men in Oregon history. Fur trapper, mountain man, and the first marshal of the Oregon Territory. Joe was fearless. But Joe had an image problem. You see, Joseph Lafayette Meek was also Oregon's first tax collector. In 1843, voluntary contributions were solicited to pay Oregon's provisional legislators. The first-year returns totaled $81.50. Clearly, an assessment was due and enforcement needed. So the legislators decided to tax virtually everything: a person's pocket watch, their horse, saddle, clothing, even tools of their trade. The next year, 1844, the state assessment roll totaled $218,000, with cattle constituting almost half the roll. And that's the way property taxes started in Oregon. People paid property taxes as a percentage of the market value of their property. It was called a levy system, and has stayed that way for over a century. Now, it took a while for Oregonians to begin to appreciate what tax dollars do for quality of life. They provide for schools, law enforcement, and fire protection. Citizens were safer, happier, and more comfortable. Life was good. Then, as it always seems to happen, taxes increased. Part of it was because property values kept rising, but part of it also was that there were virtually no limits on the amount of property taxes that districts could levy. Finally, in 1990, Oregon voters approved Measure 5. Measure 5 placed limits on two broad categories of property taxes: taxes for public schools and taxes used to support other government operations like fire and police protection. Starting in 1990, real estate values really began to climb, negating some of the good that Measure 5 had done. Still searching for relief from rising taxes, in 1996, Oregonians approved Measure 47, which was designed to limit how fast and how much property values could increase. However, the legislature soon found that measure unworkable. It was scrapped and quickly replaced by Measure 50, which was approved by voters in May of 1997. Measure 50 significantly changed the property tax system. It separated assessed value from real market value, creating a more stable and predictable tax bill from year to year. Under the previous levy-based system, taxing districts received the full amount of property tax authorized by the voters, regardless of changes in the total assessed value within the district. Annual changes in value had a direct effect on property owners because the rate was just recalculated to raise the amounts requested by the district. and that made tax bills yo-yo and unsettled the voters. Think of it as a cherry pie. Property owners authorize the districts to tax them at a rate that generates enough money to buy a cherry pie. Each year, the district adjusts their rates so that they can buy the entire cherry pie. As the amount of taxable property and its value fluctuates, what they charge each taxpayer changes in order to still be able to buy the whole pie. And when the cost of the pie goes up, so does each taxpayer's property tax bill. Under the new rate-based system, changes in the total assessed value of a taxing district do not change the tax rate. Measure 50 created a maximum assessed value, which was the real market value of your property in 1995 less 10%. Taxes were calculated on the assessed value, which is the lower of the real market value and the maximum assessed value. Since then, growth in the maximum assessed value is limited to 3% regardless of fluctuations in the real estate market, provided there have been no changes to the property, such as new construction. For homes built after 1995, the maximum assessed value is determined using the ratio of maximum assessed value to real market value of similar properties in the county in the year constructed or improved. Long story short, at the time, voters wanted tax limitations and predictability. And while it's not a perfect solution, it is an improvement. If you have questions about any of the content of this video, please reach out to your local assessment and taxation office, and they'll fill you in.
Okay, there we go. Any questions on that? There we go. Okay, so there are 3 types of ad valorem taxes. Ad valorem is just Latin for according to value. So it's taxes that are based on the value of something. The one on the left is our permanent tax rate. That's what that video was essentially just about, the transition from a levy base to a fixed permanent rate base. Measure 50 there is at the top. As it also mentioned that, and this is one of the challenges you'll probably hear when we talk about this in a couple of weeks, is that for existing properties can only go up by a maximum of 3%. That's a direct relationship to the amount of the revenue that local governments receive to provide taxes. 3% per year, if you've been paying attention to the labor market in the last several years, does not cover the increase in the cost of labor alone, not to mention other inflationary impacts. The local option tax in the middle, those are temporary levies. They're usually like 5 years long. They're meant for operating purposes, and they're really a tool to supplement the limitations that are found underneath the permanent rate, the 3% rate. And then the right, the general obligation bond, those are, think about how schools are built, school buildings. There'll be the voters will vote and pass that, and then that cost of paying the debt service back on that bond is passed on to property owners in the form of your tax bill. The county has all 3 of these in our budgets, but I just wanted to give you a summary of those. Compression.
It's the compression, it's the last bullet point under the general obligation bond.
Yeah, I can explain. Can I do that at the 29th? Okay, because I've got some really great slides. It's complicated, and I wouldn't want to mislead the group. So I'll do that on the 29th. Okay, so next steps. Again, we've said it a couple times, but all budget committees meet on the 29th to hear the budget message together and receive the proposed 24-25 budget document. Do that together. 2-week study period follows that. Then we have the 15th through the 17th to hear the specific budget presentations, deliberate, ask questions, take public comment, and so forth. And in parens there is specific committee meeting times available soon. That's what I mentioned a few minutes ago. And as needed, we have a couple of opportunities on May 22nd and 29th if we need to extend the budget committee meetings for whatever reason, and then the board will adopt the budget on the 18th of June. Yeah. Any other questions? It's a great, yeah, it's a great video. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's a great video. Yeah.
I will get back to you on the 29th with the answer to your question.
I don't think we do. I don't think I do. Would you like a paper copy? So on the website that I'll send you the link, and I'll see about getting paper. I know we had some extra ones. I think we can probably find them, but there's 3 different budget documents on the website. One is the summary, which is this. The second one, The second and third one are just different levels of detail. With the one with the most detail is down to the line item. So you can get all the way to the line item detail. I think it's 1,000 pages. So there's lots of detail there. Yeah. 29th, new one, yes. Mm-hmm.
In the email that Greg sends out, he'll also include the links. We have, I think, 7 or 8 short budget videos that further explain the budget. I would encourage, and Karen, you had mentioned when you get questions from community members, sometimes these are good, just short snippet videos too, that explains the budget process.
Very different.
Forget that.
It is. Mm-hmm. We have a baseline. We'll explain more of that later, but there's essentially it started with a baseline level of budget, which is essentially the existing year's service level plus adjustments. So adjustments for payroll cost increases that are already contracted, or if we have software leases that have say they have a 3% escalation clause, we just build those in. So it starts with that baseline. So we might have a really great example if you're thinking of capital improvements. So the county we're going into the second year, the board's will be approving, hopefully approving our capital improvement plan. And that's a 5-year outlook on capital improvements in 3 of our major areas. And the reason for that is it helps us identify major expenditures, major one-time expenditures that are coming, and so it allows us to have some time, some runway to actually fund those. Then when they actually become budgeted, it could end up being a multi-year project, but in the case of the capital fund, it could have been the amount of money funded for 3 years. And each year it just ends up getting rebudgeted year after year to follow the project. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's not a surprise because we don't normally budget for trust and agency funds. They're just a type of fund. But for example, the collection of property taxes, so it ends up being a banking activity that we perform on behalf of the other local governments. It's not a revenue to the county or an expenditure to the county. It's just a service that we provide, collecting property taxes and distributing it. So there's not a need to appropriate those dollars. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to be specific, I don't know where 3% came from. I've never actually thought about that. That's a good question. Yeah. It is, because it's fixed. So one way I've explained this before is our revenue is capped. We have a cap on revenue, but market forces control our expenses. And we don't have a cap on that. There's a floor that's being, depending on what's going on in the market, that has nothing to do with our revenue. We can't match that. So, yeah. That's right.
Yes. Yes, and I can share, that is going to be one of the changes that you'll see in the proposed budget document. The equity lens was a separate document. This year, you'll see the equity lens being embedded throughout the document, and that's just as we continue to embed equity in how we do our work. It's integrated into the actual document.
So one of the questions made me think of this is budget meetings are inherently public process, and so one of the things that we have to do is make sure that when you're communicating, it's in the budget meetings themselves, because you will get a big giant document and you may be tempted to talk to your fellow colleagues about it, but that's not appropriate because it's not, the public isn't aware of what you're communicating. So make sure that you're communicating in the actual budget meetings themselves if you have questions, et cetera.
If I could speak to that a little bit, I have a lot of questions on the budget every single year. And some of them is that I need some confirmation that my memory is okay from past budget years. Others, I'm trying to make sure I understood how the numbers go and the intent behind it. So I try to write my questions up, and when Greg and Ms. Angie deliver the budget to us, they will tell us where to email our questions to, and then they collect all those questions, and they do their best to answer those questions in time for our budget committee meetings. So you don't have to wait and have one set of questions per se. Depends on what budget committee you're on, because sometimes I end up answering my own questions. But I do try to get my questions in early. So for example, we have that study time up to May 14th, but I try to generally get my questions in by an early enough date so that staff can turn around some answers and then bring those into our next meeting. And they share the Q&A. It's a public document, and they share it with everybody, and including in the packet that we'll have for the budget committee meeting.
I think just know that staff are here to support you in this process. So at any step of the way you have a question on process, no matter, or budget, just please ask. And Greg and I are always available. I want to underscore open meeting law. That's part of ensuring trust and transparency in government. And that's something that we really focus on, is adhering to the open meeting law standards. So asking those questions, especially if that's new to you, feel free and comfortable to do so.
Any other questions, comments? Well, I just want to say thank you very much for coming tonight. Everybody's time is valuable. This is an important piece that could not be done without you, and I'm looking forward to getting to know you all better and working together on this project we call the Washington County budget. Thanks for coming.